What stands out is how effective Lula's comment was. What Lula did was basically say, let's stop with the theatrics. What we're talking about here isn't just Flávio Bolsonaro's candidacy. We're talking about Marco Rubio's candidacy too. That's what Lula did. Lula brushed that aside, put the theatrics aside, right? Let's leave that. Let's talk about this here. The truth is that we're dealing with a candidate, Marco Rubio, who's trying to send the following message to the United States or to the American public. Look, you can't face the new global geopolitical reality this time because otherwise it ends in war, in nuclear war, right? China has Asia now. Europe doesn't pay attention to us anymore, right? Let's close off America for ourselves. Let's keep Latin America for ourselves. Marco Rubio is part of Peter Rexet's group. You need to pay close attention to that. The greatest tribute we pay to Peter Rexet is sincerity. He doesn't even realize what he says. And basically, it's like this. Peter Rexet made it very clear, from now on, we're going to take care of our own backyard. Attention, he used the expression, me de more, because he was referring to Latin America. That's what they're doing. Right? There are two terrible obstacles for Latin America, not because of the first and second economies, which are the United States, Mexico, and Brazil. So in some way, Marco Rubio he is tying his political future in the United States to a Monroe Doctrine logic in the broadest sense of the word. I mean, in the new geopolitical sense that the word has today, right? And he tries to sell himself to the average American businessman, tries to sell himself to the logic behind a certain type of vote is like, don't worry, our lives won't change that much because we'll secure ourselves with our own backyard. This isn't new. It's no use saying this is new because it's not new. Okay? In the early 19th century in the United States, the political clashes were exactly like this. When you look at isolationism, that's old in the United States. It's nothing new. No? When you look at the United States, the isolationist logic in the United States, it has roots in that mindset, which has a lot to do with the Caribbean, has a lot to do with the role that England played at the beginning of the 20th century, trying to win the United States back. As incredible as it may seem, this sounds like crazy historian talk, right? Yeah, as incredible as it may seem, without Napoleon, it would have been very difficult for the United States to gain independence, right? Yeah, now during the 250th anniversary celebrations, right? Some videos clearly showed the role of France in a way everyone can understand, so you know what I'm talking about. The rebel colonists were a militia. They didn't have a navy. How could you do anything without a navy to face England? They would have blocked everything. It was France that did that. You have to look at it in the context of the rebalancing after that, right? Geopolitical struggle wasn't discovered just 5 years ago, It's been a long time, right? So it's been a long time, right? So when you look at that, right? Marco Rubio's candidacy is an appeal to that voter, right? Like a return to the past, a very typical kind, right? A return to the past, which the Republican Party leadership does not buy into. Pay attention to this, right? It's not bought. They don't buy into that, right? Because that doesn't resonate with the so-called American Christian world. It doesn't work. And that's where Vence comes in. Vence comes in with like, why is Marco Rubio so fired up and everything? Because Vence is doing that tour that's typical of a Republican candidate working Republican circles to raise funds. That's how it is. A bunch of people go to the church. Vence goes there. The money they're going to raise isn't that relevant. What's relevant is the political movement. Each one, in today's money, I don't know, it's something. But the important thing isn't the dollar, because that's not going to change anything. The advertising campaign requires billions, right? It's the big players who are going to decide that. But the political movement is important. This political movement isn't Marco Rubio's, it's Vance's. So Marco Rubio more or less chose this area to consolidate his position. You're going to ask me, and I think it was fair to ask that question. And what about Trump in all this? I'm always afraid that we need to look at certain figures and realize that they're not fools at all. Because we tend to look at Trump as if he's a fool. No, 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 no. It depends on what he wants. It depends on what he needs or wants to gain. Yeah, guys, I spent a long time looking at Trump from the wrong angle. Trump is a real estate salesman, guys. He wants to earn the commission. That's what we're talking about. It's naive to look at anything else. He doesn't understand anything that's going on, but he knows a lot about earning a commission, a lot. So he realized that in this game, Vance and Rubio, with these two clashing mindsets, complicated as they are, there was no room left for him. And he would lose any decision-making power. He wants it. He's not stupid. He knows that to keep the commission flow going, he needs to have power. He doesn't take sides with either of them. He plays both sides. One day he pleases Vance, another day he pleases Rubio. One day he pleases Vance. The photo with the family at the White House is a slap in Vance's face. Sitting at the White House holding Lula's hand, 39 seconds of affection, is a slap in Rubio's face. Keep in mind that Rubio wasn't there. Trump took advantage of the fact that Rubio wasn't around, sent Rubio to talk to the Pope, and invited Lula over for the day. That's exactly what happened.
And Professor, in this case, is Rubio the outsider in this fight, or is he not positioned that way?
This problem is a big problem. You know? This problem is a big problem because the American Republican voter, right? That's a great question, my love, because the typical Republican voter, if he even hears the word outsider or gets a whiff of it, he walks away.
They're not drawn to the outsider angle.
Bad luck? No, no, no.
The United States dislikes a dark horse.
Professor, it's just that they don't like it. No, the Republican, the typical voter, the one who's registered with the party.
Yes. Okay.
That's not what, among Republican voters, you can even have an outsider, a dark horse, etc. But the registered party voter has, and I think the outsider in this case is a delicate matter. That's why Vance is so threatening, because he goes after that registered voter.
And the fact that Rubio has a Latino background, does that make things more complicated for him too?
My feeling is that he pays very close attention to the vote in the states and also to the vote in the primaries, in the swing states where Latinos have a huge influence. In those 6 swing states, Latinos have enormous influence. And of course, he also looks in some way at Florida. Although in Florida, we have a funny, curious problem. It's Florida. If Texas is Texas, Florida is Florida, right? Ron DeSantis, who is the governor, doesn't get along with Marco Rubio. So they have an internal dispute there, right? So it's not just Florida, it's the Latinos, right? In the sense of the 6 swing states. And he plays on that strength, right? Trump looks at this wisely, right? I keep thinking about this, Demonio. I imagine Trump sitting in a comfortable chair with Machiavelli's The Prince open in his hand.
The devil loves it. Hey, what's up? But the Machiavellian difference is
he opens the book, right? He reads the first, second, and third lines, then says he doesn't understand any of it. It's basically the same thing, with all due respect. Like when we attribute acts of genius to mafia bosses, political struggle isn't shaped by Machiavelli alone. Political struggle, in fact, was what Machiavelli taught the prince. Pay attention to human mediocrity. Pay attention. That's what he taught the prince the most. Pay attention, right? To the terrible game between lions and foxes, right? Pay attention. So this is a fact that I think is very complex for us to evaluate, but sometimes it's not Machiavellianism, it's just political sensitivity.
done. Perfect. TREVISAN, let me switch topics with you. There were deaths there. I remember talking here on the channel with you in our master classes that we have here with TREVISAN, and you saying, look, when black body bags start arriving, things get serious because that's when American soldiers start dying, right? In other words, it's extremely serious, okay, guys? This thing about black body bags, which happens during major wars and so on, you can imagine that this happens. And this invariably has a very high cost for all American presidents who have had to deal with it. So 3 US military personnel were killed this past week amid the conflicts and amid the US attack, the US aggression against Iran, and things are really heating up there, right? Netanyahu made a statement. Iran is escalating its rhetoric and Trump is doing the same. And I remember that from the beginning in this analysis, TREVISAN, you've been saying that the goal of the United States was to turn the entire Middle East into a kind of Dubai, because above all, the Sunnis were keeping an eye on this process, the Abraham Accords. We've already talked a bit about all of this here on the channel. I want to hear your thoughts. What's your analysis regarding these latest developments, these latest scenes of this story we've been following? And what do you see as most relevant in this situation regarding these main leaders? Netanyahu, even Lula have spoken out as well. I want to hear your thoughts on this, TREVISAN.
Look, what I can see in this new situation with Iran is that Trump has one more problem. And the problem is much bigger than what he had before when the war started, maybe even much bigger than Iran itself. It's the fact that the Arab countries, allies of the United States for decades, including Saudi Arabia, are starting to realize that it's more advantageous. It's better. There's no other way. It's better to bring Iran into the game than to take it out of the game.
Is it because of the Strait of Hormuz, Professor?
Essentially because of the Strait. Essentially because of another factor, which is China. China means Iran, right? And the moderate Arab countries, right? We haven't paid much attention to that. In May, right, throughout the whole month of May, there was a steady stream of foreign ministers that culminated with Mohammed bin Salman's own trip to Beijing. Without this information, we don't really understand how things unfolded, right? Because what the moderate Arab countries realized is that the mistake was very serious when it came to starting a conflict with Iran. Because the United States could never have imagined, right, that China would give the support it did, that Russia would give the support it did, and that this would shift the balance, right? And Hormuz made it clear, right, that without Iran, there is no reopening of the strait.